Oh no. Oh shit. Are we on? Is everyone here? I've got my Discord chat over there. I've got YouTube chat in the other corner. We have mods. It's been a wee while. This is probably the last stream I'll do with this ridiculous £30 webcam. How's everyone doing? By the way, this is also the first time that we're using Discord chat in the corner because YouTube chat is disgusting. So if you want to come into the Discord, just follow the description in the YouTube video and you will find a link there. You'll be treated well. You'll get emotes. You'll get people with colored names. I'm going to give everyone a minute to come in. I already see there's a bit of a contention about where I stand on Bernie or bust. And I just did. Are you really wondering that? I had been a bit torn over whether I should say that now or later. I don't know. Yeah, we'll wait. But anyway, I know what some of you are thinking. Who the fuck am I? A Scottish person, a European, potentially telling a bunch of Americans how they should be voting. Well, yeah, you want to know. Well, because what happens in America, you guys might probably be aware of this, affects pretty much everyone. It affects us here. Ever since Trump got elected, the behavior of every single conservative in the country has been to do exactly what Trump does. Not apologizing for everything, getting more and more harsh when it comes to immigration. Very, not so gradually, pushing rights away from the press, being selective with who they give their interviews to. It's not good. Not good at all. I don't like having Trump in there. And of course, I'm not a fucking Bernie or bust person. So sorry to disappoint the 2 people in YouTube chat who were expecting me to be. So, but I'm not just going to talk about that. You've probably seen about 20 different videos from the likes of Vosh or Xander Hall or even Destiny, rest in peace, talking about why participating in electoral politics once every 4 or 5 years is better than not doing it. Pretty obvious, I would have liked to think. But I'd also like to contribute an argument to it that I don't think people have heard. The reason I want to do that is because my other leftist comrades who are on this ride-in with Biden thing, people who I think are very, very good at debating Nazis and conservatives, etc., often maybe kind of fall into this trap of using the same rhetorical techniques and presentation against people like Bernie or Busters. I think maybe when it comes to debating with the left, you have to realize that you've got a different audience, and maybe they can be convinced in slightly more amicable ways. And out of the 10 videos I currently have on YouTube, pretty much, yeah, every single one of them has at least a handful of people saying that this changed their mind on whatever I was talking about. So if I can do that here, I will consider that a win, even if it's whatever you'd call it, like fucking foreign intervention. First it was the Russians, then it was Lonerbox with his 170 viewers on a YouTube stream. So I'm going to start this. I don't just want to talk about Bernie or bust because it's quite, my argument there is actually quite brief. If I wanted to make sense of it, I would probably start by talking about SocDems. There's a bit of an overlap there. The kind of distinction, like the conflict between communists and SocDems, and or just any far left people in SocDems, as well as Bernie or Busters and riding with Biden people. It's a bit of a loose connection, but I'm going to try and maybe kill two birds with one stone and resolve a few tensions between in both of these areas. So, is that Satan Madpun in my Discord? Is that you, Satan? Satan? He's gone quiet. If that is, I'll give you a color, Satan, after this. Okay. Before I get into Bernie or Bust, I don't even know why these two have to seem to have gone side by side, but I feel like there's kind of been a bit of a kind of divide by amongst social democrats and far left people almost around the same time as the Bernie or Bust thing, which is I don't really understand that, but because I see quite a lot of tension between those two groups, it's sometimes a bit difficult to remember that even Destiny is basically a SocDem, more or less. But yeah, let's talk about why we should resolve that first conflict. Now, me personally, I am not a SocDem. I'm very far left. I'm a communist, a fucking libertarian socialist, an anarcho-syndicalist, all of those things. It depends who you're talking to. You sometimes have to use different titles just based on your audience. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to define the difference between the two terms. I'm going to steelman SocDems. Then I'm going to destroy them with facts and logic. And then I'm going to say why we need them anyway, and why we should support them anyway. And then I'm going to link that into Bernie or Bust somehow. So, obviously, if you're an anti-capitalist, that's the big difference between you and a SocDem. If you're a communist or a libertarian socialist or anarcho-syndicalist, what you believe in is that capitalism, i.e. private property, class divisions between bosses and workers, the profit motive in a context of global international competition, inevitably produces a few outcomes. It degrades the environment, it involves seizures of land, it involves land grabbing, it involves alienation of workers, massive alienation of workers. It produces cyclical economic crises. I think the average is between 8 and 12 years. Once every 8 and 12 years, capitalist economies go into some form of crisis. The best way around this is to say, capitalism, you've done a good job. You've basically stretched your tentacles around the entire world. If you are a system that basically demands endless growth, exponential growth from a world with finite resources, we've reached a bit of an impasse there. Where else are you going to go? Capitalism can't really grow in the way it used to in the 19th and 20th century. Not at all. It can either continue to scramble for what's left over, i.e. like parts of Africa, maybe just untapped resources in South America and the like, or we can go the other way and grow in a purely abstract way, like we could become an information economy or a digital economy, in which case less and less useful things are getting produced. And if you see what happens in digital economies, at the rate things are going now with it, then you'll eventually have something like 99% of the world's wealth in the hands of 5 families within 50 to 100 years. Not good, not based, very cringe. That's the argument. SocDems, on the other hand, essentially believe that capitalism is here to stay. They might do the whole Winston Churchill, it's the worst system that's ever existed, but it's also the best one we have. It's better than any of the alternatives. I phrased that so badly. the best we can do is to temper the bad parts of capitalism, the inequalities, the alienation. We do this with redistributive policies funded by progressive taxes. You tax the rich, spend that money on wealth redistribution, public services, education, healthcare, literacy, etc., etc. You also maybe limit things like the rate at which corporations can destroy the environment or destroy workers' rights. So those are the two main differences. One is within capitalism, the other one is without. Historically, if you're properly on the left, yeah, lots and lots of people don't like SocDems. It was you'll hear they killed Rosa Luxemburg. It was a SocDem interior minister, I think he was interior minister, who started the Freikorps, the group of right-wing mercenaries who were used to attack progressives and eventually incorporated into the Nazi Party later on. They were also the first people to use swastikas before the Nazis. The Freikorps, who were founded by SocDems, adorned their banners with swastikas. So yeah, they've got a bit of a history. They've basically always been known to have conflict with the left whenever they've had to. But I'm going to steelman them nonetheless. That was a long time ago. My camera's poop, Duskglow, because I got a camera, I got a new one that I borrowed from a friend that was terrible. Then I got another new one. It's a bit better. I just need the cable. I don't have the right HDMI cable to plug it into my computer. This is the last stream with a shit camera. So, amazing. Okay. So, I'm going to steelman social democracy in the present day. The steelman of them is basically that they're right. Like, it's very quickly becoming consensus amongst economists that what we need to save capitalism, or just to get out of the current crisis that we're in, is state provisions and progressive taxes. Because what we've had since probably the 1970s or 1980s is that capitalism has basically had an excess of power, where trade unions no longer have any influence, where wages have been relatively flat or low. There's been very little restrictions on capitalist activity. There's been privatization of resources that are completely impractical in private hands, like railways, gas supplies, water supplies, healthcare, etc. Social democracy has a history of saving capitalists from their own stupidity, or saving capitalists from themselves. Every capitalist wants to pay low wages, and they want to have privatized healthcare, and they want to have privatized railways. The problem is, if they all get what they want, if everyone is ill-paid, is struggling with their rent, is not really taking care, not really able to get far beyond their basic means of subsistence, then they can't sell anything. They originally solved that over the last 30 or 40 years by giving everyone credit cards. That didn't go very well. And at this point, they've just reached a space where there isn't much incentive for them to invest any further in economic production. So SocDems, if you're from a capitalist perspective, social democracy is kind of necessary right now. It's especially necessary in Europe. It's necessary in America. It's not very productive to have 30 million people in America at risk of losing their homes. People doing that are not very economically viable citizens. So SocDems are right for that, and they're also right in the sense that they do make the world a better, like those policies do make the world a better place. I know there's a bit of kind of excessive admiration given to places like Norway and Sweden and Finland and all that, but they do outperform the rest of the world on basically every indices I don't remember how I used that word. Yeah, they're, and even if you look at the comparison between Scotland and England, where Scotland has been relatively social democratic compared to England, we've still managed to keep free education, free higher education. We've still managed to keep free prescriptions, and all the better for it, really. So that's my steel man. That's why SocDems are basically correct in the argument on their terms. Left out, of course, I left out Denmark. Very, very true. Sorry, I'm sorry I didn't name every single SocDem country. Bookchin. Fucking, you missed out Iceland. Okay, how about that? Faroe Islands, which is part of Denmark. Okay. Hey, Satan, please don't tag me in Discord chat. Thank you. Only because it's slightly distracting, and if I had my speakers up, that would have gone into my mic. No big deal. Okay. By the way, so that is you. Yeah, I just saw that is you. I did a few videos on Africa not long ago. They were all right. I'm fairly proud of them. A couple of mistakes that I've already gone over. Satan Mad Pun actually has even better ones, much better than mine. So find him on. I'm gonna put his thing. I'm gonna plug Satan Mad Pun. There's the guy. Subscribe to him. Watch his videos. Especially there's one on that was Africa and the myth of a savage continent. Yeah. Go forth. Have a look. Okay. Now I'm going to talk about why SocDems are still wrong. And historically, the very quick answer, wrong in two ways. One is practical, the other is kind of philosophical. So, well, my Discord chat is very far behind. Yeah. Oh, well, we'll fix that another time. Not a big deal right now. Okay. So, the first reason SocDems are basically, it's not even so much that they're wrong, it's just an Achilles heel. I would say that holy shit, there are nearly 300 viewers. Amazing. Okay, SocDems are wrong because of inflation, basically. Every instance I can think of is, well, not always, but generally speaking, is that it ends with an inflation crisis. At least it did when SocDem was kind of the dominant thing in the 50s and 60s in the UK and America and across Europe. Very simple reason for that. If you are an economy that is constantly raising the standards of workers, workers tend to get fussy. They join trade unions. You get massive union representation, and you get basically a situation where they can raise their wages in accordance with productivity all the time. Problem with that is bosses want to make a profit. Their way around that, if people keep on rising their wages, is to raise prices. Capital Volume 2, Karl Marx, if you look at the back cover of it, that's that quote. If a worker achieves a higher wage by day, he'll go home to find that his rent is higher. And that's basically what happened. That's what happened in the 1970s in the UK. It's what happened in America. There came a threshold. If inevitably companies refused to invest, there was essentially a strike amongst bosses. They consequently, if bosses aren't investing, people lose their jobs. If people lose their jobs, they become more desperate for work. They accept lower wages. The wages drop. Capitalists start investing again. Social democracy. Done. And that's kind of the process that's been going on in Scandinavia recently. Sweden, still better than most of the world, but they're kind of losing that right now, and it was inevitable that they would. Because, yeah, workers' rights will always be a thorn in the side of capitalism, and there's always going to be that threshold where you can't really improve human conditions any further. YouTube chat. Yeah, I'm going to get to why that's why this is no reason to not welcome SocDems into the community. I will get to that. Oh yeah, every metric in map, not index. It's indices, isn't it? Isn't that the singular as well as plural? I have no idea. Okay, so it can't last forever, and then the inevitable pendular swing that you get is the neoliberal model, where you move power over to bosses, you privatize, you stagnate wages, you destroy trade unions, etc., etc. And that's very good for bosses. So leftists in the 1970s, when all this was happening, and the 1980s, they did have an opportunity to just say something like, maybe their rhetoric could have been something like, we can't go, okay, we've just seen that we can't go any further with this whole capitalist project. That what's the point in degrading people's living standards and causing massive unemployment on the altar of an abstract economic system? So they could have said that was their opportunity to move beyond capitalism, but they didn't. If you look at the rhetoric of the old Labour Party, chat froze. Oh no, oh no, 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 no. Let's find it. A new chat froze. This is disgusting. Where are you? Here we are. Oh, it's been frozen for 8. Why will it not? No, I have been scrolling down. It's back now, isn't it? No, it's fine. Okay. It's been fixed. Someone tell me it's been fixed so I can move on. Yeah, it totally is. Holy shit. 323 viewers. Woof. Okay. Okay. Where the hell was I? Oh yeah, leftists. Yeah, if you look at the rhetoric of the old Labour Party in the 70s and 80s, especially like the union movements as well, Arthur Scargill and all that, it wasn't really like, you can see why they lost. They didn't just lose because they had, a lot less funding and because there was a crisis that was exploited by Thatcher and all those people. They also lost because they were kind of making very conservative arguments. They were saying things like they were going against technological innovations that would have reduced the need for labor. Obviously, because that meant people losing jobs, but they didn't really. Instead of, they could have said something like programs of compensation instead of just keep people in work, and they didn't really have a way around the Tory argument, which was that they were becoming the party of progress, and the SocDems were the camp of being kind of stuck, of stagnation. And that's why they were branded as Luddites. They fought against automation in the car manufacturing industry in particular. Obviously, that doesn't fly with the public, like no matter what you do. Yeah, so people hated them. Thatcher won a landslide in 1979 on those grounds, that the movements, the union movements and Arthur Scargill and the Labour Party were being regressive. And in a very loose way, I think she was right. Very loose way. And yeah, it's maybe a bit, just to give you an impression of how much the left was disliked at that point. When people always talk today about how, the young wins, the young people vote left, the old people vote right, that's the cleavage that we have right now. Thatcher won a majority even amongst people aged 18 to 24. Like, you look at Thatcher now and her reputation, she won over the youth in the 1970s. So I would put that down to the rhetorical failures of SocDems and of their inability to move beyond the system that they had previously rescued. Yeah, I said cleavage. Okay, yeah, I need to find a way to actually, I'm just going to keep chat up. I'll keep up in this little corner. Okay. I think it stays moving. Yeah, okay. We're learning, guys. It's my third stream. Fuck off. So that's why they're practically wrong in the long term. So they're also wrong on a philosophical level as well. This is just a... Okay, wait. I'm just going to watch my chat and make sure it stays. Okay. Okay, yeah, fine. Yeah, so the reason that they're wrong on a philosophical level, and I think this doesn't actually apply to all SocDems, but it definitely does. Yeah, it does apply to the ones who have maybe more of a kind of the particularly anti far left SocDems, and that's the idea that it tends to have an underlying assumption that capitalism is here to stay. So the idea is that the things that we leftists ask for are radical policies like the worker co-ops, etc. Is basically that it's just not very optically good, and it's also just not very practical, they'll say. And this is a big thing with like the practical idea. And I think where I see SocDems falling short here is, I think the problem that they have is, and I'm sorry if this is maybe a bit patronizing, but this is quite a loose criticism. They kind of remind me, when I used to teach music, they kind of remind me of music students, like new music students, especially older ones, because what you'll tend to hear with new people who are coming in for music lessons is they'll say things like, they'll give you this argument like, oh, I wish I could play guitar or piano and all that, but I don't have the musical ability for it, which is really fucking weird. Like it's very, I don't even know what fallacy you would call that, but it's kind of like saying because they haven't practiced or learned things yet, then they can't do it in the future, because no one is born like shitting out guitar chords and piano pieces. Like everyone has to learn at some stage, and everyone starts not knowing anything. But because people have this kind of like assumption, or they'll try for the first time and it'll feel like it's going nowhere, and then they think, oh, if I can't do it now, then it's just not in me, I never can. They might as well be saying, I can't play the piano because I don't have 100 hours of prior practice under my belt to do so now, which is, kind of confusing your past and present sort of thing. And I think this is kind of, naturalistic fallacy. Yeah. And I think that's completely the case with SocDems who say that the best we can do is compromise with capitalism, because it's a problem, it's kind of this rhetoric that tends to see, that tends to only be able to see the future as an extension of things that are already happening. That's the dismissal that you'll get of utopian projects. And the problem with that fallacy in politics and in socioeconomic theory is that people who believe that have always been wrong. If you went back to the 1500s, for example, like the argument that people have against worker co-ops today, always like whether it's liberals or right-wing people, it's always this kind of, well, if they're so good, why are they not everywhere? Why have they not superseded the previous project? Well, maybe it's good for these industries, but if you made it ubiquitous, how could that ever work? It's just all this kind of like, that's never been done before. How can we imagine a world purely based on that mode of production? And I just wonder, I'm going to turn my volume down. So I just wonder if you went back to the 1500s and were speaking to some merchants in Genoa, which is kind of where you could say the kind of seeds of capitalism were starting to appear. And you went to them and said, well, could we be doing this? Could this be the way that production happens everywhere? And then obviously some other whatever centrist feudal lord would sit there, arms folded. Well, interesting that, yes, you spend money to make more money. Well, why isn't that already happening? Why haven't we already, have I not become a merchant? Where's the research to prove this would be better? You've only got a small sample. You can't prove this would be functional as a European model or a global model, because your sample size is too small. You've just got some merchants on boats going, getting given money and then fucking off and coming back with more money's worth of stuff. So it's I don't know if it's like a lack of imagination or a defeatist attitude, but that's kind of what I think of them. But nonetheless, all that aside, inflation, economic pragmatism, philosophical sort of issue there, we still need SocDems. The reason we need them is because when people say that SocDems were, their kind of genesis was based on an effort to save capitalism, well, they did save capitalism, but they also endangered capitalism massively. The closest anywhere in Europe came to a revolution in the 20th century was under social democracy, was in the 1960s when, say, like the UK was the most equal, one of the most equal societies in the world, where international capital was so restricted that if you wanted to go on holiday in the UK in the 1960s, you couldn't take more than £40 out of the country with you. £40 was worth a bit more than it is now, but still, that's a restriction, right? That's a big restriction. And under those conditions, you had in Europe, which is, they had the same sort of system in West Germany, France, etc. Well, you had the 68 Prague Spring, you had the French student revolts where they very nearly overthrew the entire French government. You had massive unionization, even though the workers at that time were demonstrably more fulfilled than they are now. They were more unionized and they were much more militant. But survey data and polling data on this kind of shows that they were proud of what they did. Car manufacturers and people who worked in these like kind of high-skill manual labor jobs were proud of what they were able to do. They were high-skilled. They were doing things that not everyone else could do. In some cases, not always, maybe with the exception of mining and more dangerous ones, it was good for their physical fitness, for their health. So you had this kind of dichotomy where they were extremely politically antagonistic towards the system, but they were also fulfilled. And that's very simple, because simply explained, because the reason you get that is because people are at their most politically dangerous when they're doing well. People become fussy. China is having the exact same problem right now, actually. China, when I think it was 2012, 2013, I very, very distinctly remember that there was this big fuss that China was preparing for some kind of international conflict because they tripled they doubled external security. That was the line. They doubled external security. What tended to disappear beneath those headlines and articles was that they tripled internal security. They were more scared or more worried about problems coming from within than from without. And that was because the last 20 or 30 years of a growing middle class in China has meant that people have become more politically restive. They've been having to afford union rights to people. There have been strikes, there have been uprisings, there have been all kinds of things that happen within China from people who are better off now than they were before when they were relatively docile. So I don't like this accelerationist thing from the left, which is the idea that things have to get worse before they can get better. Maybe, I'm sure you'll find exceptional cases, but I would tend to argue as a more general rule that it's the other way around. It's not the idea that, people might say like power corrupts. If people become middle class, they'll become complacent and conservative and all that shit. If power corrupts, then the only thing that corrupts more is impotence, is the inability to affect change around you. That's the thing that inspires people into very, very dark solutions. That's the kind of desperation and the hopelessness that draws people to very simple and seductive answers like white supremacy. You know, people in high skilled jobs, like they don't, and with a relatively middle class income, don't necessarily have as much need to feel proud of the average IQ of their race or how their ancestors from 500 years ago built better buildings than people with black ancestors. You know, they don't need that shit. That's for people that like white supremacy and that kind of fascist rhetoric. That's for people who are desperate, for people who are miserable. And that's why people like Steve Bannon and recruitment folks in the alt-right will target people who are miserable. They'll go on incel forums and they'll try and find people who are sexually unfulfilled and have no confidence in their masculinity and all that kind of, you know, they'll go for they go for chuds, you know, unimpressive fuckfaces who are the only people in society who need to be told, hey, did you know that it's great that you're white? Yeah, that's what they need that. So that's my take on social democrats. It's much more, and we can see this with polling. You know, the thing, Bernie did better than in 2016 than he did in 2020. Democrats historically have always, we'll come to this in a minute, Democrats will always be easier to push left than Republicans and conservatives will be, obviously. So, I really appreciate people in the chat complimenting me on my looks, though. That's, yeah, I didn't have a very good morning today. I woke up late and I tried to go for a walk and it was like warm, but too warm. And I wore too many layers expecting it to be cold. But yes, I'm very, very grateful to you people in here. Thank you. Okay. Sorry for tapping on my desk. Anyway. That's my sort of critique / defense of the social democrats. We need them and they need us, right? We need them, they need us. So, I just spilled water on myself. Oh my God. I'm a bit crammed here in this little box. I need to get a better desk so I can move around a bit better. I'm going to glance at YouTube chat to make sure it's still under control. Dono, are you moderating YouTube chat? Have a look. 401. Oh my God. That's the biggest stream I've ever done. Holy shit. Okay. I might actually upload this stream. I feel like it's going quite well. Up to you guys. I won't be able to trim it because I didn't record it because my computer can't handle that. But hey, amazing. So, what does this have to do? I can see people are asking me questions in chat. I'll have a little chat discussion afterwards. I might do a viewer call in, but hey, who knows? We'll see. Depends on how well behaved you people are. Right. Bernie or bust. It'll go up as an Bannock, it'll go up as an unlisted thing. It's just whether I want to make it like a listed prepared content thing. Like have it alongside my very obsessively taken care of videos compared to this. But what knows? Anyway. What does this have to do with Bernie or bust? Well, we know that Bernie was the SocDem. Biden is not. By any measure, Biden is a conservative. Any other country in Europe, you put Biden in there, he would be, well, first of all, he wouldn't be anywhere because we like our candidates to speak in full sentences here. He'd be on the right. He'd be pretty far right, I'd imagine, given the crime bill, his views on privatization, etc., etc. So, but what this has to do with Bernie or bust is that if you want the policies that Bernie was putting forward, there's very little chance that it'll come through Biden. But there's no chance it'll come through Trump, okay, obviously. Now, I think the place where Bernie or busters need convinced is just whether or not there's any difference. And the evidence is that it is very hard to say that there is a plausible difference in potential between Democrats and Republicans. If I wanted to steelman the Bernie or bust thing, it would be historically Democrats and Republicans are basically the same thing. Unless you have a country of massive union representation and very strongly represented socialist and communist and anarchist parties, then both sides are stacked by the same corporate interests, and that's who they'll follow. And historically, that's what they've done. So the difference is, though, just because, no, I'll put this. Maybe if we had to go with a historical case study, a historical example, that not so much a parallel, but just maybe a little story that might give you something to think about. Let's put it that way. We tend to probably the closest association with social democracy in America was FDR, right? So FDR comes in, I think it's 1930s he got elected, 1920s, 30s. He introduced massive revolutionary change in America. Tax rates were skyrocketed on the upper earning brackets, and that was used to pay for massive infrastructural projects, which provided people with jobs. He made it much easier for working class people to buy homes. There were massive house building projects, things like that. There was Social Security for the very first time, like social provisions, Social Security in particular, for the first time in history. People who were retired finally got a monthly check every month until they were dead. That was Roosevelt. It was so popular and so effective, it pulled America out of the Great Depression. It was so effective that he won 4 terms. 4. He died in office. So he is the reason that Republicans later on changed the rule down to 2 terms. Because the only people who have ever had a chance of winning more than 2 terms historically have been Democrats. Like, Republicans just aren't that popular, unfortunately. So, yeah, the New Deal. What people tend to maybe be a bit less aware of is FDR did not win his first election promising anything of the sort. He did not promise the New Deal. He was not recognized as a social democrat. Like, neither of those things. Roosevelt was initially sworn in as what you would call a fiscal conservative, which is the country's in debt, and the role of government is to balance the books, to reduce government spending, to pull government out of private interest, to kind of give companies an incentive to invest by big government leaving them alone. He was basically, his argument was neolib. It was austerity. So I'll give you a quote from Roosevelt, which I managed to dig up, and I think is very, very relevant. This is Roosevelt speaking in 1932 in the federal budget. See if this is familiar to you. So he says, 1932, a while before the New Deal. Now, the credit of the family depends chiefly on whether that family is living within its income. And that is equally true of the nation. If the nation is living within its income, its credit is good. If in some crisis it lives beyond its income for a year or 2, it can usually borrow temporarily at reasonable rates. But, my friends, like a spendthrift, it throws discretion to the winds and is willing to make no sacrifice at all in spending, if it extends its taxing to the limit of the people's power to pay and continues to pile up deficits, then it is on the road to bankruptcy. That's not what a SocDem would say. That's what Thatcher would have said. You could have attached that to Margaret Thatcher, the household analogy, you know, comparing the economy of a country to a household. That's what the British Conservative Party said in 2010. That's how they justified austerity for the last 10 years. This is the kind of thing that Biden would say. Biden did say something like this when he was elected alongside Obama, because they did the same thing. So, yeah, this was from FDR, the same guy who struck the New Deal. And what happened was, the New Deal did not come from FDR. It came from trade unions, often trade unions who were mostly concentrated in the South, places like Oklahoma and Kansas, believe it or not. It also came from socialist and communist parties, the CIO, and it was them who pulled together this proposition of the New Deal. I think there are logs of meetings between Roosevelt and the union leaders and the CIO saying where they presented this case. And I'm pretty sure I think the line from Roosevelt was, I think I got this from Naomi Klein. You might need to check this. So might check me up on this because I couldn't find the original source. But his essential argument was, okay, that's fine, but make me do it. Because he's a politician. Politicians are not leaders. They are very good at, a good politician will appear like a leader, but often, pretty much always, is they will either swing in the direction that they're pulled. In this case, FDR was pulled by FDR was pulled over by very, very aggressive action from the left. I think in 1930, it was sometime in the late 1930s, there was 1 year when there was about 4,000 strikes across America in 1 year. That's the kind of pressure that was put on FDR. And eventually, so we saw that speech that he said in 1932. In 1936, what he said was, you can paste that same argument later on. I saw it, but I couldn't read it properly. I'll tell you when. So in 1936, this was a campaign speech from Roosevelt, because this was, after he had caved into pressure from the socialists and the communists and the trade unions, etc. He said the following: to balance our budget in 1933 or 34 or 35 would have been a crime against the American people. To do so, we should either have had to make a capital levy that would have been confiscatory, or we should have had to set our face against human suffering with callous indifference. When Americans suffered, we refused to pass by on the other side. Humanity came first. So, that's a very SocDem kind of take there. Based, very based, not cringe. But the point is that he wasn't elected on those terms. He was made one while he was in office, almost as if he was, almost as if he was voted for and then opposed from day one. Now, is this a parallel with someone like Joe Biden? Absolutely not. Okay, Biden is not the same as FDR. Biden is far more conservative, I think, than FDR ever was. Biden cannot speak in full sentences. Biden is not a very great rhetorician. At least he's not anymore. But what I think is true with Biden, and this is really what makes all the difference for me, is that the chances of him getting pulled over by pressure from the left on any issue at all is higher than zero. So, I mean, that's what makes the difference for me. That's why, if I were living in America on November 3rd, why if I think, well, I could spend an hour voting today, or I could not, then yeah, I'm going to vote. And this has always been from people who, very, very popular dissidents within the left. For example, yeah, Flu, I think that was a joke, that quote. I don't think I'm going to get clipped out of context saying that Biden is the next FDR. Okay. So I think where I can go from there is, yeah, I mean, this is, say, what we've got in the UK, dissidents within the left. We know Jeremy Corbyn. We know what he was like in 2017 and 2019. We know he was probably the most progressive candidate in all of Europe. Like some of his, if you actually look at the Labour manifesto of 2017, compare that to anything that people are suggesting in America. Like Corbyn wasn't even a SocDem; he was a socialist. He was a full-on anti-capitalist, maybe incrementally, but yeah, that's. And he stayed in the Labour Party through what? Through Tony Blair, through PFI, through extended privatization of the NHS, through 2 fucking wars that he opposed, and the line that he always stuck by, because he was a very big understudy of Tony Benn, the very, very if you don't know who Tony Benn is, by the way, you should look him up. He's amazing. The British Labour MP who was very prominent all the way up until he died, actually, till he was about 95. He was always like a massive icon on the left, like the very far left. And he had this really good quote, which was, even after because he left the Labour Party, or he left the cabinet, I think. I don't know if he left the party, but he left the cabinet after the Iraq War. So he, his justification was that he would still always vote for the party, even if he left. I'm pretty sure he did left. I think he left to start an anti-war coalition. I'm almost sure that's what happened. But when he left, he was asked whether he would still vote for Labour, and his answer was basically, it was, if I don't vote for Labour, then I'm implicitly conceding the idea that Labour is not the lesser of 2 evils. That was it. That was his justification, which is it's so fucking miserable. I can't stand the fact that, like, I've never in my life been able to vote for the party I wanted to, living in Scotland. I've always had to just concede with the SNP because their only close opposition where I live has been Tories. So of course I'm not going to choose fucking Tories over, like let that happen, and it's a close margin as well. But that's, politics isn't a safe space. Politics is not supposed to be easy. If you're on the left, politics is basically always losing. So that's what I would kind of hope to do, is just to say at least one person. I'm going to mention one other point, Satan, because I'm going to take you out of context here, because you did say something about someone who genuinely believes that socialism can be achieved through electoral politics. No, it can't. True. Again, what I was saying with that was, electoral politics can achieve social democracy, and social democracy is the historical record is the only system that can give people the appropriate breathing space with which to allow them to entertain ideas like socialism on a broad scale. It's much easier to convince a comfortable middle class of radical ideas than it is of radical left-wing ideas than it is to convince people who are dealing with fucking Trump. That's what I would say with that. And if that means stop tagging me, but okay, what? Okay, yeah, it's way out of context. Okay, no, yeah, that's why I said I was just taking that statement. Yeah, okay. But yeah. So, where do I close? Fucking vote. Hold your nose. Say a prayer. Vote Biden. Immediately after, wash your mouth. I don't know, fucking, or just vote and then continue to pursue the activism that you've always thought was superior to voting, whichever you thought that was. Okay. Oh, Yellowbird. Hello there. I was going to call you, but then I thought I would do it after stream, but you're here. Amazing. So, I think we succeeded. Did we succeed? Did we win? Yeah, stop tagging me. I appreciate the mods backing me up on there. I haven't been able to see much of YouTube chat at all, but I'd hopefully like to think that you guys got into that you guys got in here otherwise. Are people asking if I'm taking calls? Okay, one thing I'm not going to do though is, I know this is very hypocritical of me. I know I've just spoken a shitload about SocDems and Burn Your Bust and trashed Burn Your Busters and, probably not steelmanned them as well as I could have, I don't know. However, I'm not going to argue with Burn Your Busters on a stream. I'm sorry. It's optically useless. I don't know. I'm sorry. I would generally talk about most things, but I'm absolutely not talking about Burn Your Bust on a stream. Just a bit odd to me. There's something off with it. And I don't enjoy watching other people do it as well. I don't even enjoy it when people are... I don't even enjoy it when the left is winning the argument in those discussions. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to take the cum pledge. I'm definitely... I think it's okay to get angry online. But thoughts on Scottish independence? It's pretty based. Did I talk about that? I'm going to check one thing, though. I disabled my... I don't think there are donos coming in this stream because I moved most of the people to Discord. I'll just check anyway, in case I need to speak to people. I also get to check if I lost any subscribers on that take. I did not. Yes. Maybe like 3. I think I lost about 3. Tankies. Get out. Thoughts on Comrade Nicola? I don't know. Oh yeah, Scottish Independent. Okay. Fuck. Okay, no. Tell you what. I've had a lot of fun, you guys. I would like to carry this on, but the thing is, if I might want to upload this whole thing, I'm going to have to do it as a thing on its own. So I can't split the stream up. So I'm just going to put it like this, and that'll be me. So I will leave you guys there for now. I'm probably going to stream a bit more regularly because I've got my monitor coming tomorrow. I'll have 2 monitors. I'll be able to do video games. I'll be able to do any of that other shit. And yeah, and the fact that I can get 400 people in here to listen to me talk shit is pretty fucking amazing. You have no idea how grateful that makes me. So yeah, I mean, I didn't actually promise viewer call-ins, but okay, I swear next time, whatever the fuck I'm streaming next time, there'll be viewer call-ins, there'll be fights, there'll be blood. I'll raise my voice. I'll find some fucking idiots. We'll get mods to capture the chuds to lead them to me. It'd be good. But all right. Thank you very much for coming, my friends. Been very good. And I'm not joining, no, big dick daddy girl. I said it once. Next time. Yeah, voice chat afterwards. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm gonna probably go and have a shower. I've sweated like a bucket today. And okay, this is a very long goodbye. Bye. Fuck you. Trans rights, BLM, behave yourselves, vote, etc.